I am just going to give a content warning. So the book that we're going to be discussing today, which is Kindred by Octavia Butler, this is it here. This is the Folio Society edition. Is about slavery in the United States in the early 1800s. And so there's content warnings for everything that entails, which is violence, rape, oppression, racism, sexism, all of that. I'm going to try to discuss it, not so like graphically unless we need to, because this is a crafting show. But what I am going to do is whenever we're talking about the book explicitly, I have this image right here in the upper right corner of the screen that I can pop up to let you know that that's what we're talking about. So this announcement is for some like hypothetical person like 3 years in the future who just stumbles across this playlist and wants to make this album, so that if they're not in the right headspace to have this discussion, or if they don't want to be spoiled for the book, just when that's up, that's when I'm going to be talking about it, and you can just mute. You can just mute. And when I'm actually, when I'm giving crafting instructions, I will take that down so that you know to unmute and listen. So there we go. And if you want me to do this for all the books so that, there's no spoilers for books on the channel, I can do that for all the books if you think that would be useful or helpful. So, okay, so I've got all my pieces cut out, and now I'm gonna lay them all. I have them all laid out, and this is kind of how I think I want them to be. I do think I want those little beans there and the little geotag. The only question is, what kind of element is this gonna be? Is it gonna be something that's kind of a pocket in the sense that there's like a hinge, say here, and we can tuck the photo mats behind it? Do we like that idea? Or do we want to just glue it to the page and the photo mats will just sit on top of it? What are we thinking? I'll let you vote. So, so if you want to make a pocket, so what I would do, how I would do that is I'd probably put this on a piece of cardstock that had a hinge on the right, cut it out so there's 1/8 of an inch all the way around the whole element, and then tuck that hinge, glue that hinge down and have one at the bottom as well, so that we can tuck the stuff behind it. So if you want to do it where this is all one element on a piece of cardstock that we can tuck the cards behind, put a 1 in the chat. And then if not, you know what, I'm just going to make it a pocket, because that way that's another thing that you can see as a way to do something. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ink this, and I'm going to get a piece of the gray cardstock, and we're gonna get it all sorted out. So I'm going to get a piece of gray cardstock, and I'm going to just pause discussion of the book. So I'm going to, I see you guys continue to post in the chat about the book and discuss it, and when we're working on the next, the next time I can be working, cutting out, which will be when I'm cutting out around the pocket, I'll put the book back up, and then I'll address them. So you don't need to pause your discussions, but I'm going to pause while I explain how I'm going to make the pocket. Okay, so the way that I would do a pocket like this, this was not in the thing. So I'm going to take a piece. This is just a 12 by 12 piece of cardstock because I didn't have a scrap big enough. And I'm going to score it at 1 inch and then turn it and score it at 1 inch. So I want to create an intersection of the two lines. Then I'm gonna fold on the lines and burnish. Okay. And then when I start to stick everything down, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stick it down, you know, so I can have 1/8 of an inch all the way around. Okay. So I'm gonna stick this one down. With glue, just because it'll be easier. Since it's just a shape, you know, because it's not a perfect rectangle. It's pretty close though. All right, so now I'm going to, whenever I do a bunch of layered embellishments, what I want to do is lay them out and ultimately find a way to glue them together where I'm working back. From the back to the front. So I need to find, like when I lay them out, I'm looking for what's my lowest layer, okay? Okay, so in this case, my furthermost back layer is the best friends. So that's the one I have to stick down first, okay? And I want the geotag to point at the best. So I need to make sure that the best is on the edge because I know I want my geotag on the edge. So what I'm going to do in something like this is I'm just going to make sure that I put it high enough up. And so once I know where it needs to be in terms of height, just going to put a Post-it there so I can stick it down. So I'm now going to peel this tape. And then, like I said, I want the best on the edge. And then I can just set that to the side. And just burnish that. Then the next thing that goes down is the blue feather. So what I need to do is I'm going to hold the pink feather in place while I stick down the blue feather. And so I'm going to stick down that blue feather. Then the next thing that goes down is the pink beans. They go behind the pink feather right there. So that's what we're going to do. I'm just going to tuck them right there. Then I can stick them down. Then I can finally do this piece because it's the top layer. Okay. And then the last piece is the geotag, which I want half on and half off, pointing at the best. And since I kind of set it up like that from the beginning, I can just stick it down. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim around this whole thing with my craft knife so that okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to my paper trimmer and I'm going to cut it off, you know, cut it down to a more manageable size, and then I will start to work on it. All right, so now that it's in this state, I'm going to put tape on the edges and cut the corner. All right. Okay, so now we want to cut this corner so that, you know, those layers don't overlap. So I just cut straight through the X and then fold it to make sure they're not overlapping. They're not overlapping. Okay, so then the way that we would stick this down is we would make slits in the paper from here to here and from here to here that we can tuck these flaps through so that behind this we don't see the flap, we only see this beautiful pattern paper. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pencil and mark a line a ½ inch in lightly with pencil. Okay, okay, so once I have my pencil lines, I can put this in the corner, okay, and then I can draw along the edge here And then that gives me the intersection of where I need to make the cuts. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that with a craft knife. And then find the other line. Okay. And then what I'm going to do to help minimize any tearing is I'm going to take my 16th inch hole punch, and right here and right here I'm going to punch a hole at the intersection of the lines so that I have a little bit of breathing room. Okay. And then the way that this will work is we will pull this up and tuck this under so that it's going to go like so. All right. So when you peel it, when you look behind it, you see none of the flap and you only see the beautiful pattern paper. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put tape on the edge here, and then we will talk about the book some more while I cut around the edge for a little bit. All right, so I'm gonna just burnish that. I'm gonna set this aside, and then I'm gonna carefully cut around this shape so that, you know, it has a nice edge, and then we'll go from there. So I'm gonna put the book back up, and we're gonna go. All right. Okay, so one of the things that came up is like individual responsibility versus societal responsibility for oppression. So I think that it's really, I think one of the things that Octavia Butler is saying is that, you know, the amount of damage that's done by one person is not the same as the amount of damage that's done by an entire system of oppression, an entire malevolent hierarchy that we all are forced to participate in, one, you know, just by virtue of living in a particular place at a particular time. You know, she's very much concerned with, I think, systems of oppression and how systems of oppression change the people that live under them and in them, unless, you know, those people are working very, very, very hard at not being changed. And, you know, progress is made over time. It's like, oh gosh, I can't think of his name. He was a universalist, abolitionist. He's the, you know, he said that the arc of history is long, and my eye sees but a little way, but I am sure it bends towards justice. And he said this in the 1830s. and I just can't think of his name right now. But he was a preacher and an abolitionist, and he was talking about how that you have to keep working at whatever you can keep working at, work as hard as you can to dismantle what you can, but understand also that the power that you're up against is immense, and that there's an entropy where, these systems exist beyond when people want them to exist. People want them to stop, and they keep going on. And that what it takes to dismantle them is immense. And again, specifically speaking about this, it took a war where almost 1 million people died. That's what it took. But like these systems, there are systems in place still. Theodore Parker, thank you, Candy. Yes, it was Theodore Parker. Thank you. How close was I with my paraphrasing? So I guess I was close enough that Google got it. So there's that. So like, what's an example? Like you could be not even actively maintaining a system of oppression, and it could still be, you as a society could not be actively maintaining a system of oppression, and it could still be oppressing people. So like let's take lead in pipes in Baltimore. So if you get an old redlining map for the city of Baltimore, and you lay it on a table, and you mark all of the neighborhoods where historically Black people were allowed to buy houses and make communities, and you take a map of modern Baltimore and you highlight on that map where there's still lead pipes in the city. Yeah, like buying a house. Yeah. And you lay the modern Baltimore map, okay, of where there's lead in the water in Baltimore at high enough concentrations that it does cause disabilities in children, okay? So much so often that the city just writes checks for the rest of their lives to the children who get this childhood lead poisoning from these pipes. They do that instead of fixing the pipes, okay? If you take the modern Baltimore lead pipe map and you put it on the Jim Crow era redlining map, they line up identical, okay? So, and that's not because the current government of Baltimore wants it that way. They're not actively maintaining that oppression. It's just no one's done anything about it. No one said we have to invest in the infrastructure of these areas. And that's because of the system of tying infrastructure improvement to property taxes. So because there's lead in the water in these neighborhoods, the properties aren't as valuable. Therefore, not as many taxes are collected. Therefore, there's no money for infrastructure improvement. Therefore, lead stays in the water in the pipes. Therefore, the value of the houses remains low. And it's this endless circle. And it's evil. It's evil. There should not be a neighborhood in the United States, anywhere in the United States, where there's sufficient lead in the water that it's a matter of course that people get childhood lead poisoning that gives them lifelong problems with learning and aggression and personality disorders. It just ruins their life from the beginning. That exists today in a city where there's no one actively. That's true, Ellen. If they know about, so the government of Baltimore, they know about it enough that they're writing the checks. They know about it enough that they're writing the checks. So it is being maintained in that way, in that they're not doing anything about it. in terms of they're not just saying, okay, we're just going to take city money, we're going to figure out it's going to come from somewhere, whether we have to raise sales tax by this amount and everyone's just going to have to suck it up, because if you are going to protest that, then you suck anyways. You know, like sometimes there'll be a temporary increase in sales tax to fix a road or something like that. I mean, they could do something like that. They don't. So yeah, it is a maintenance. I don't think it's like intentional in the same way as like the Jim Crow stuff was, but like this is the type of stuff that exists. So this is the type of stuff that goes on. This is oppression. It's related to historical civil rights abuses. It's a current civil rights abuse. These are the systems that she's talking about. She, being Octavia Butler, I think when I said earlier that she writes about the past, but she's talking about the present, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. This is just one example in one city. I mean, there are tons, you know, there are tons, okay? So, you know, this is where you have to talk about systems, where you have to say, maybe we uncouple infrastructure improvement from property tax. Like, you know, people don't want to hear that, because if they live in an area that benefits from high property taxes and good infrastructure improvement, they don't want that to go down. You know, they don't want equity because that means their quality of life has to go down because they're benefiting from the system, you know, and that's the corrupting power of malevolent hierarchies. Wow, I'm like getting really mad. Okay, so let me cut this out. God, let me calm down. Let me talk about birthdays and the symbolism of birthdays in the book, because I think that's important. So in the book, the first time Dana travels back to the past, it's on her birthday. And I think that that's symbolic of the fact that people became slaves on their birthday, on the literal day of their literal birth. Okay? And the last day that she travels back to the past is on America's birthday. It's on July 4th, 1976. So that's the last time she travels back. And that's, you know, the birth of slavery in the United States, the birth of the system, you know. So I think that birthdays are really symbolic in the book. I think that the July 4th being the last day she had to deal with slavery is just meaning that it's just going to happen over and over and over and over again because it's been this way from the beginning. I think that's the message there. Specifically, she does not travel from June 19th to July 4th, so she doesn't travel back in time on or near the anniversary of the emancipation of the final slaves. I think that matters because she specifically gives the date that that's not when she's going back. She's going back to she's going back to the beginning. She's going back to on America's beginning, on the beginning of this corrupt, malevolent, horrible system that she's still feeling the effects of in 1976 on the 200th anniversary of it. You know, because that is, I think it's not a coincidence that the book takes place in 1976, even though it was published in 1979, because it's 200th anniversary of the fact that from the beginning they didn't address this issue. You know, they could have, and they didn't. You know, so yeah, you know, so I think birthdays really matter. You know, she's waiting on a birthday, like everything she thinks she's just waiting for the birthday of this particular person because she'll be free on their birthday. You know, like she won't have to deal with this anymore once this particular person is born. You know, so birthdays are really important in the story. I think she uses birthdays really interestingly. And another thing that I think she does really interestingly is tell you something horrible is going to happen soon, like really bad. And then she just drops that, and then just kind of normalish stuff happens for a while. And so you stop being tense about the fact that she told you something horrible was going to happen. But like, you know, like she ratchets up the tension again. So she like freaks you out. Then she lets you relax, and then she ratchets up the tension, and then the bad thing happens, and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot that she warned me that this bad thing was going to happen. And I think that's symbolic of how, like, even you can't be like totally terrified 24/7 when you live in a hierarchy, like a malevolent hierarchy like this. There are times when you just kind of you get comfortable, you're living your life. This happens to Dana. She just gets comfortable, she's living her life, she forgets how dangerous her position is, and then something really terrible happens to her. And I think that the you know, that's the answer, is that you if any moment when you're not working on being anti whatever the thing is, anti-racist, anti-sexist, whatever, then you're slipping back, you know, into the stew, I guess. So that, you know, but that you can't be doing it 24/7 every second of every day. Like, it's just too much for your brain. It's, you know, it's too stressful. It's too whatever. And so that this is inevitably going to be this like cycle, you know. I think she does that really well, because what's the first thing we find out about Dana? That she doesn't have a left arm anymore. That's the first thing we find out about her. The first thing we know is that she's missing her arm. And then it takes the entirety of the rest of the book to figure out how she loses her arm. And I think that the way she loses her arm is when she finally, spoiler, when she finally kills Rufus. When she kills him, he has grabbed her wrist. He's holding onto her left arm like this. And so when she goes back to the future, she leaves her arm with Rufus in the past. And that's, I think, another just really powerful symbol of how this trauma changes you. This, like, she's not whole anymore because of what she's been through, what she's lived through. And it's the same. Trauma changes people. Like, we know that trauma actually changes people's DNA now. So, and that the DNA changes from that trauma can be passed on from generation to generation. So, you know, this is like, and that's not something Octavia Butler would have known, but she knew. You know what I mean? Like, she knew. So I just think that the book is so well done. And when I was reading about the book a little bit to talk to you, one of the things I read is that when she originally started writing the book, that Dana was a man. And I just couldn't imagine the story with a man. Like, you know, I was like, what would that even have looked like? Like, I'm sure it would have been good, but it would have been a different story for sure, because Dana has to deal with intersectional oppression, because she's not just oppressed for being black, she's oppressed for being a woman as well. So, you know, and that's two levels on which Kevin doesn't have oppression, because he's white and he's a man. So, you know, I wonder, you know, because Dana's a woman, if maybe Kevin's the kind of saying what Octavia Butler was going to say through a male Dana. I don't know. I don't know what any of that means. I just thought it was really interesting to that she was originally writing a male hero to the story. So that was really fascinating to me as well. All right. So let me get this tape on and then catch up the people who aren't listening, the people who are muting, and then we'll see where we are. What is it, 3:30? Oh. All right, so I'm going to take down the icon and catch everyone up, and then we'll be, then we'll decide what we're going to do. My encoding is overloaded. Ooh. All right, so let me, what do I need to do? Oh yeah, I need to take the image down. Okay, so if you've been on mute, then what has happened is I cut around that piece. You saw me do it, so you know what I did. I cut around the piece, and then I stuck it through the slit that I made. And now all we have to do is peel all the tape and stick this to the book, and then pick our pattern paper to go above and below. All right. This is another beautiful pocket page. I really am appreciating what we've been doing with this book. So now we're just going to have to pick our pattern paper to go above and below, but all right, so I'm gonna okay, so I'm going to press really well on not only the edge, okay, but also like the edge of this piece. Okay, and so now you can see how it's just pattern paper back there. So we can take our 3 photo mats, 1, 2, 3, and we can tuck them behind. And there we go. We've got our photo mats. And of course you could just stick photos directly in. You know, it's up to you. Obviously, you can do whatever you want. It's your book, of course. So, all right. So now we just need pattern paper above and below. So I'm going to remove the photos so I can see the whole like little layout. And all the same colors, the gray and the pink, are in the flaps on the other side. And on this flap you never see. So it's really these 3. So we're totally fine. Just we can use blue, we can use yellow, we can use the pink or the gray. So I'm going to go through the scraps and see what we see. See what we see. All right, so this is something that would work. Ooh, I wonder if, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, the color's right, but is it just too many patterns between this pattern and that pattern and that pattern? We could do the butterflies, but I think the butterflies are too busy. And the yellow on the back is this same pattern, and it's a little too matchy-matchy. That's like, is that too much or is that just enough? What do we think? What do we think about the plaid? No? No, we don't like the plaid? Or no, it's not too much? I wonder if I could do like a combination of the plaid and the blue. Like maybe just use like an inch and a half of the plaid right along, and then put this above and below with the brick. Or we do have the coffee and the plaid. I don't think the coffee and the plaid. I think the blue and the plaid, and we'll just use a strip of the plaid. And I will cut maybe we'll cut a row of the diamonds out of this and use it in between the combo. So that's what we'll do. All right. So we'll do like 1.5 inches of the plaid, and then we'll do the rest, the blue with the brick that's on the other side of it. And then I'm going to cut like a row of these diamonds out to use as a bridge between them. So I'll do that first, where I cut the rows of the 2 rows of diamonds out. I'm just going to put the 2-inch tape on the back and get to cutting that, and then we can talk about, let me know in the chat if there's something from the book that you want to discuss that I haven't discussed yet. And if not, I can look at some of the other themes. You know, we can talk about some of the other themes, because while the main theme is, you know, the corrupting influence of power, that's not the only theme. Okay, so I'm going to put the warning up first, and then I'm going to cut out and then I'm going to cut this out and we can chit chat. But I want to go back. All right, so I put tape on the back, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out this row and keep the black with it, and then I'm going to cut out this row and keep the black with it, so that the black goes all the way around the row of diamonds that I cut out. All right, so here we go. Okay, so I'm going to just start by cutting back and forth, back and forth. It's just going to be, you know, a little bit tedious, but I do think another theme of the book has to do with familial love and ties that bind. And what kind of ties, what has the greater hold on you? Is it ties of familial love? Is it ties of shared experience? Is it ties of shared philosophy? You know, what are the most important ties in the book? So like she taught, like I said, Dana, she, even though the title of the book is Kindred, and it's about her family members, you know, her ancestors rather, that the only time she uses the word kindred is when she's talking about Kevin. And she is, by her present day family, she experiences a form of rejection from her present day family when she decides to marry Kevin, because they feel rejected by her. You know, so, which is interesting. And then in the past, you know, she has 2 family members that she deals with on a regular basis, and that's Alice and that's Rufus. And it, you know, her relationships with the 2 of them are both really fraught. And yet she does care about both of them. You know, she even cares about Rufus, you know. Like, she still cares about him even when he's really, 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 really bad. Like, really bad, you know. So And, you know, she passionately hates him at the end, but, you know, she does feel so strongly about him. And she does try, like, she does think maybe that she can keep him from being too corrupted by the system. You know, and maybe she could have if she was there all the time. You know, she's not there all the time, but maybe she couldn't have. You know, maybe even if she was there all the time, it wouldn't have made a difference because, again, it's these systems that are so much more powerful than single individuals, and they take collective action. Well, I think it may be captor bonding. So that's another thing. Like, in other words, like, I think Octavia Butler is saying that it's not just the oppressors who are changed, it's the oppressed as well. And that's why, you know, Dana keeps shifting her lines of what she will and won't tolerate. And, you know, she asked herself at the end, like, could she even forgive him if he did sexually assault her? And thinks maybe she could have, but she doesn't have to find out. You know, and Kevin has trouble understanding her relationship with him to the point where he just assumes that they're sleeping together, which is just rude, Kevin. Just rude. So, but yeah, I mean, obviously looking at it, even though we're in Dana's head, she never quite explains why she is willing to tolerate it. I mean, it's just that we know that she loves him, I guess, by that point, and considers him family. You know, she does think of him as family, sort of. More like a brother or maybe like a nephew or something, I think, but than her grandfather. But, you know, she recognizes that even when he's a little kid and he decides to burn down the house, that he's so young. He's like, what, 7 or 8 or something like that? And he's already, like, you know, understands revenge and how to hurt his father, and that the only way to hurt his father is through money. You could, you know, Helsinki syndrome. Yeah, I think the clinical term for it might actually be captor bonding, where, you know, when people are in horrible situations like this, you know, where your life depends on the good graces of someone else, then you can form bonds with them, even though it's not safe to do so, like as in hostage situations as it occurs. So, and she talks about it when Rufus throws that party. I think it's for a wedding, and Rufus throws a party for a wedding, or maybe, you know, and how she said that the people seem to kind of love him and hate him in equal measure. And I'm like, I mean, you know, maybe they just like hate him more than they love him. But you know, it's just her observation that it's complicated, you know, that the psychology is complicated. And maybe she's projecting, you know, like maybe they just hate him, but they're acting like they love him because he's there and they have to seem grateful. But there is definitely like something that goes on with Dana where, you know, what she will tolerate just changes constantly throughout the book. And what she's subjected to gets, you know, progressively worse and worse as well. And, you know, the violence she's subjected to doesn't end when his father dies at all, you know, because the chief architect of violence against Dana was his father. But then as soon as his father dies, he just kind of picks it right up. And he does it for, like, out of revenge, out of petty reasons, you know, like to punish her for not wanting to stay with him and not loving him enough. You know, where his dad seems almost like a total psychopath, you know. But Yeah. Yeah, it's a challenging read. I think it challenges you as the reader to think about the ways that you benefit from malevolent hierarchy and what you could do to what you could do to help dismantle them, you know, what habits of yours you could change. And then with the things that you can't change, you know, what can you organize? Can you donate to an organization that is working to change it to a, you know, collective action is needed for some of these things, like with the phones, like I was saying. So, but yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot as a book, you know, but I do think it's about now. You know, it's about 1976. It's about 2021. You know, that's, I think, what Octavia Butler's real gift is, where she's drawing from the format. There's two literary traditions that she uses in this book. She uses the slave narrative, which is a literary tradition where people would write down what the experiences of slaves who made it to the North or who made it to freedom had, or sometimes they wrote them themselves, like Frederick Douglass wrote his own, Harriet Tubman wrote her own, and so Octavia Butler read a ton of those while she was preparing for this, because she wanted Dana's story to kind of sound like that, to have the same tone, like she was telling the story to someone. But the other thing that she really leans on is a literary tradition known as the fantastical travelogue, which is, I believe, the first maybe Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. And of course, Jonathan Swift's kind of famous for more or less inventing the genre of satire, where you talk about something extraordinarily serious with a kind of mocking tone, in such an exaggerated way that it almost seems like that that you are highlighting it. And the first work is A Modest Proposal, in which he suggests that the Irish could solve their starvation problem, where the British were starving them to death deliberately, that the problem would be solved if they would just eat their children, because they would A, have food, and B, have fewer mouths to feed. Duh. What's wrong with the stupid Irish that they haven't thought of this? And of course, it's not a modest proposal. It's radical and crazy, you know, and people like flipped out when he wrote it. British people were really mad because it painted them, because of the light it painted them in. And then he also wrote Gulliver's Travels, which, you know, a lot of people are familiar with, about a guy who travels around to a bunch of different worlds. And again, he uses those different worlds to talk about where he lives. And so that, and Jules Verne is another person who wrote like this, you know. And so she, you know, is drawing on those influences as well as someone, you know, and so she's kind of bringing together a very Western canon. People did think that Jonathan Swift was serious when he suggested that. Because satire, that was really kind of the first work of satire. So, you know, so people didn't know how to look for satire at the time. Okay, so here's one strip. So now we have this nice little row of diamonds that we'll be able to, we'll just do it like this. It'll just look like so. All right, so that'll be really cute. So yeah, he definitely freaked a lot of people out with that. Definitely. So now all I have to do is cut my second diamond. So she's drawing on that. So she's taking a literary tradition that was primarily a white man thing, and she's combining it with a literary tradition that's like exclusively a Black American thing, and she's making something that's both familiar and new when she does this. So you know, she really is a genius, absolutely. And you know, that's why I do encourage you to read diversely, because that's how you have these new literary experiences, you know, where this is the first book of its kind, you know, literally the first book of its kind. So So yeah, yeah, I think it's a really important book. I know it's a downer, obviously, but I think it's a reminder that is really something that is very useful to have, um, to remember what happens when you let things go, when you let things slide, you know, and that we've got to constantly be working towards, like Theodore Parker says, we've got to constantly be working towards justice. Because when he says that the arc of history is long, my mind sees, but my eye sees but a little ways, you know, but I'm sure it bends towards justice. The reason it bends towards justice is people are constantly, tirelessly working on improving things. So as soon as we stop stop working, stop improving, that's when, you know, you're going to have problems. So sometimes you have ups and sometimes you have downs, but you constantly have to be working. If you think I miss my calling, I should have been a literature teacher. My mom's always saying I should have been a teacher, and I always say I am a teacher. I just teach crafting. Like, but you know. All right. Okay, so now that I've got my next edge, I can just go cut the top, and then we'll be able to do the next. But yeah, so any questions? Anything you didn't understand? Do you feel like we've discussed this book enough? We can talk about something else tonight. But I thank you all, for everyone who voted for this book. Thank you for voting for it. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite authors and one of the books that meant a lot to me. And this isn't the only book of hers that has meant a lot to me, but it's one that has. So thank you for voting for it. Oh, and if you want to know if you made the right call in terms of the books, you know, I think we could have had a discussion about, you know, I think we could have had a good discussion about any of the three books. However, I do think that the, maybe like that the message of this book is kind of the most timeless of the three books. And Riot Baby in particular has kind of a non-standard innovative format that made reading it a little more challenging. Just literally the act of reading it and understanding what was going on at any given point, kind of a little challenging. You know, I gave it 4 stars, not 5. Underground Railroad, I give 5 stars. I do recommend it. You know, I do think what Colson Whitehead does with that book is really interesting, where he, you know, uses magical realism to kind of cover the whole civil rights movement. And even though the book takes place only in the 1830s, he just does it metaphorically, and that's very interesting. But I don't think it's as, like, again, I just don't think it's as relevant necessarily to, like, what you could do to, like, what you could examine in your own behavior. I think that's what, you know, Kindred is really good for, is your own self-reflection about, you know, what you are and are not doing, and what you could and should not do. So, and I think that Octavia Butler is, you know, she's indicting herself, you know, because Dana is so similar to her, that I think, you know, Octavia Butler is saying through Dana, you know, and Dana, of course, it's a first person narrative, so it's I. She's cooperating too. So, like, she's not letting herself off the hook at all. You know, she's saying this is a human problem we all have to deal with. It's a human problem to cooperate with evil. You know, it's just something people do. So, like, the experiments about malevolent hierarchy that were done in the 60s, the famous electrocution experiments, where people were made to electrocute someone over and over and over again, and they weren't really electrocuting the person, but they thought they were. Those were done because the doctor doing them, his family escaped Germany from during the Holocaust, and he wanted to understand why so many just normal, everyday Germans participated in everything that was going on there, when they weren't necessarily ideologically aligned with what was going on or didn't approve of it, you know. And he just found that people get afraid, and they participate, you know, when someone with authority tells them, no, this is the way things are, this is the way things have to be, they just can kind of go along with it. That's a human instinct that we have to work against, always be on guard against. So, yep. All right, there we go. Okay, so I think that's going to be it for our discussion of Kindred today. I'm not going to talk about the book anymore today, or I'm not going to talk about the book anymore this afternoon, because it's 4 o'clock. So I'm going to take the thing down, and then I'm going to just kind of like wrap up like what we got done this afternoon and where we're going to start tonight. And then you guys just let me know in the chat if you want to keep talking about the book more tonight, or if you think that we've really covered it. I mean, I feel pretty good about our discussion, but if you want to continue it, we can. Otherwise, we can just talk about something else. Talk about some other stuff. What TV we've been watching, whatever. You know, let me know. And, all right, so, okay. Okay, so I just took down the Kindred sign, and I just want to catch everyone up to what I was doing. So what I did while we were discussing the book again is I cut out a row of these diamonds, and I cut them out so that the black border would stay with them. And I cut out 2 rows like that. And then when we come back tonight, we're going to finish off this page. But actually, I'm just going to do it now. So I'm just going to cut strips off of this, and then we will, okay, let's do, I mean, I think that we covered it pretty well, so, all right, I'm going to cut 2.5 inch strips off of this. All right, so when we come back tonight, we'll just, we won't be discussing the book anymore. We finished our discussion. Again, thanks to everyone who participated. I know it's not necessarily a book you enjoy, but I hope you appreciated it and liked your experience with Octavia Butler. Time travel aside, for the people that aren't time travel fans. All right, so I'm going to cut these down, and I just need to think about what size. Okay, 7.5. I couldn't remember what size everything needed to be, so let me cut all my pieces, and then we'll put this page together so that this pocket is completely done. All right, so we've got our strips here, and I just need to kind of figure out how big this piece needs to be. So I think I'll cut it to 2 inches. So I'm going to cut two 2-inch strips of the blue. Oops, it's too short on the top. I forgot they were different heights. So I'm going to have to tape this back together and cut it again. That's every time. Every time I got a Franken paper. How is Jack? Oh, the cats have fleas. So, I mean, we initially blamed Jack, even though that's probably not fair, but I really think it's probably Tiny Cat. It's just because they go outside on the patio, so we must have gotten fleas on the patio. So I need to look into like some kind of bug spray we could spray around the outside of the screen, around the outside of the cage that the pool's in, to keep fleas from getting on the pool deck. I mean, we got them the flea medication, and like after 2 days they were fine. They stopped scratching. I mean, they're probably not fine. Ooh, my light just fell down. I guess I don't need that, you know. All right, so all right. So now what am I going to do? So I'm going to ink. Let's see, I've got these pieces. We're going to tape, chomp the corners. I don't know what this is. Oh, this is the piece I cut off. Okay, let me put it with the scraps. Okay. So, oh, this roll is, she also thinks I should be a lawyer or run for Congress for my district because she's my mom. She thinks I should be president or something. All right, I think I finally used up all my 1/2-inch tape, so now I can just use 3-inch tape all the time. But if I'd been an English literature teacher, then I probably wouldn't have done this show, and we never would have met and had book club. So things maybe worked out the way they were supposed to. As for DE, okay. Yeah, because I don't want them to get diatomaceous earth. Okay. Yeah, I just don't want the cats to get the fleas again, because Advantage is easy to use and it works really fast, but it's not like it's cheap. And we have 3 cats now, so I mean, it's like $60 for a box of 6. It's like 10 doses, $10 a dose. So that's $30 a month. $30 a month. I am going to round the corners, Donna, yes. Yeah, we'll talk about some, we're done talking about the book. So tonight we'll just talk about fun stuff. Do not worry. And then probably next month's book will be lighter, but I don't know enough about the books to know for sure. However, definitely April. Definitely April. Have I discussed my favorite easy read books? Actually, I don't know if I've ever talked about my favorite fluffy books. Like, I just checked out from the library today, Take a Hint, Danny Brown, which is a romance novel by Talia Hibbert. I read the first one, which is Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and I thought it was cute, and that's what I picked the sequel. It's about these sisters in a family. If you like romance novels, they're on the steamier side, so just like be aware. But like, if you like romance novels, those are cute. What else? I like Jasper Fforde. If you like classic literature especially, he writes kind of like zany books about people who investigate literary crimes, but it's not like literary crimes like you would think. It's like someone traveled back in time to make sure that Charlotte Bronte would never write Wuthering Heights or something, and then they've got to figure out how to fix it, and they're just very funny, but they have a lot of references to classic literature. What else? Do I like any funny mysteries? I read a lot of the woman who wrote the Sookie Stackhouse books. She wrote about a house cleaning private detective. I liked those. Jan said she enjoyed 8 Perfect Murders, which I did recommend last week. Again, especially if you like Agatha Christie, like Poirot and all of that. It's murder mysteries, but it's not like the heaviest a murder mystery can get. It's definitely not light reading. Let's see. What else? well, I mean, everyone's probably heard of them by now, but the Stephanie Plum novels, I used to really read those, but I haven't read them in probably 10 years, so I don't know what Stephanie's up to these days. Oh, Christopher Moore. Any of his books. Love Christopher Moore. A Dirty Job in particular, if you want a specific recommendation, which is about a guy who becomes the Grim Reaper. It's a comedy, very bizarre and zany and funny. What else? I read The House on the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune earlier this year. That was a really, it had a lot of depth, but it was just like really charming and sweet. It's told in the middle grade style, like but the content is adult. Like it's definitely a book for adults, but it's about magical children who live in a boarding school because like they, you know, might be dangerous to society or whatever. It's going to take forever to ink this. I should have thought about that before I decided to go overtime today. Definitely going to have to split this up. It's going to split it into chunks. Yeah, I quit somewhere around 12-ish, I think, with the Stephanie Plums. But yeah, like I said, Charlaine Harris, who wrote the Sookie Stackhouse books, which are kind of light and fun, although they go way off the rails and get really weird, and I didn't finish that series either. That she definitely wrote some murder mystery series that I didn't finish about people. She cleaned houses or something. She had some kind of like job like that, and then but because she was on the lam or something, and then and there's also a woman who there's a series of murder mysteries set in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, by a woman who's hiding from her ex-husband, and she always has some kind of, you know, under the table job so that she can stay hidden, that she's doing. And I can't think of what those were, but she, you know, it's the same kind of cozy mystery. She's just doing her job, and like she comes across a murder. All right. So we're going to go like this and like this. And then like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick them together just with a little piece of tape, and I'm just sticking the tape to the tape backing so that it's not sticking to the paper. And then that's going to allow me to stick down this strip. And then I can just trim it on the edge here with some scissors. and hit that with the ink. Okay, so the strip is going to hold the two pieces together when I peel the tape off the back. What else? I mean, I know I gave him a hard time, but Riley Sager, the guy who wrote Lock Every Door, you know, he's got other books if you want some kind of mystery thrillers. But I guess my problem with Riley Sager is like the premises of his books always sound more interesting than his books actually end up being. So, okay, so this one I'm gonna, okay, 2 1/4 is where I need to measure it. So what I'm gonna do is 2 1/4 inches in, I'm gonna draw a pencil line. So that's 2 1/4 inches in, and then I'm going to line my pattern paper up with that pencil line and stick it down. Okay, and then I'm going to stick my piece on top of it, which I do still need to ink. Oh, the other thing you could read, I recommended it earlier this year, but to read As You Wish by Carrie Elwes. He played Wesley in The Princess Bride, and he wrote a book about the filming of the movie, and that's also very light, fluffy, just lots of fun, you know, especially if you like the Princess Bride movie. I recommend that. I really enjoyed that this year, and that wasn't too heavy duty. I haven't read it's called As You Wish by Carrie Elwes, and I think it's Careylwes. As You Wish, but it's about the making of The Princess Bride. Super cute, really fun. I mean, even if you just like any kind of Hollywood's behind the scenes, I think you'll like it, but especially if you liked it. Flowers in the Attic, when I was in high school, that was like the book you stole from your older sister to sneak read, you know what I mean? But I never, I did read it, but I don't really remember. I never read the rest of the series. I just read Flowers in the Attic, and I haven't read it since high school, so I really don't remember much. I mean, I remember, like, you know, but I don't really remember. But I have seen people mentioning it a lot more lately. Is it having a renaissance? Is it having a moment? Yeah, he was the bad guy in Twister also. Oh, okay, so it's like back again for another generation of kids to go over. That's funny. Um, all right, and now we'll peel the tape and stick it down, and that's one more. Well, and it's so funny because it's so weird that he's the bad guy in Twister because, like, he worked for the Weather Channel. Like, he's not like, I mean, he's like, they're like, oh, what a sellout, doing science for money with the evil Weather Channel. Like, it's like, that's just such a weird, like, it's at the time, you know, you're watching the movie, whatever, you're not thinking that deeply about it because it's not the kind of movie that you meditate on a lot. But, like, if you think about it later, it's, like, really weird how he's the villain because he has funding, because like he's to do science to save lives. Like, it's like he's the bad guy because he's trying to make a stop people from getting sucked into tornadoes. It's so funny. Oh, it's so funny. He sold out for the money. Oh, we need something to go in there. Oh, man. We need to get some little embellishment to go in there. Man, this class is going on forever. I'm going to have to probably chop it into 3 pieces. Is there anything in here I could use? Will a 3x4 card fit? Maybe that's gonna save me. No, a 3x4 card won't fit. Now I can cut a card down. You know. Here, I'll use a smile as the best makeup a girl could ever wear. And we'll just cut the sides down. Because it has room on the sides to be cut down. Yes, he was also Robin Hood in Men in Tights. And he was like in the Saw movies too. Like, he's definitely had a really random career. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is cut the sides down and then chomp the corners and make this a little tag. So I'll cut a 1/4 inch off off each edge, and then corner stub, you know, not stub, angle punch the corners to make it a little tag. It's not skinny enough, so I'm going to cut another 1/4 inch off each edge, and then I'll chomp it again. Ink the edges. You could just journal right on the back of it. It's got the yellow on the back. It's light enough that you could just write right on it if you wanted to. All right, let's make another one. this is gonna work. This Makeup is Art, Beauty is Spirit. I'll use this one too. And what I'm going to do with this one is cut a 1/2 inch off each edge. All right, so now we have something in the pocket to show that it's a pocket. And now we can be done. All right. Cute. Oh my gosh. It's so cute. Now we just have to find the closure. Here it is. See how there's the butterflies on the closure? Obviously, that's why I did the butterflies on the inside, to tie the inside to the outside. As you know, I'm always like playing 4-dimensional chess, thinking 10 steps ahead. Nothing gets past me ever, ever. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone who joined me today. Thank you for joining me for book club this year, and for this book in particular. Thank you for continuing to watch the Pouch-A-Lope series. I am still having lots of fun with this album. We've got 4 more pockets to go. So I'll be back tonight to work on the next, or the envelopes. I'll be back tonight to work on the next envelope. We will not be discussing the book anymore, so tonight will just be chill. I stretched our brains enough for one day. And, what else? Do I have any other? Oh, announcements. So tomorrow, in the Facebook group, voting for the March book starts and goes through the weekend. On Monday, I'm going to announce the winner of the March book club, so we'll know what the March book is. Then I also have the April book. I told you at the beginning of this class what the April books would be, so you can check the beginning of the video for those, or actually it's probably going to be broken up into multiple videos at this point, so probably check the previous video for those. And anything else? I think that, oh, and on Monday, I'm going to be putting up the post with the information, rules, etc. for Scrappy, not Scrappy Bowl, for Glitter Party 2021. So how you can share your projects with the group and get a chance to win a Rototrim, which is the paper trimmer that I use. So that'll go up on Monday, as well as the winner of the March book club. So stay tuned for that. Link in the video description to the Facebook group if you need it. And I think that that will do it. I will see you tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern USA time, which is roughly 4 hours and 20 minutes from now. So whatever time it is where you are now, if you're watching this live, add 4 hours and 20 minutes. That's when I'll be back. For those of you overseas who are headed to dinner or headed to bed, have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you next week. Everyone else, I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye now.